I was giving maybe like 2% to the Lord. And I was like, here, this is all I've got. And I don't know what to do. And I felt guilty. I felt God didn't love me. I felt these depressive feelings, these depressive thoughts. And I felt he was punishing me.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I'm staying here.
To whom else shall we go?
The Why I Stay podcast, where we find joy in staying in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm your host, Lynzi Clyde, and I want to ask you, why do you stay? What would it be like to struggle with a severe mental illness for 25 years and not feel the Spirit and not feel the words of Christ in your life? Hi, guys. I'm Lynzi Clyde. Welcome back to the Why I Stay podcast. Today we have Lacy Elson, who has struggled with bipolar disorder for 25 years, and most of that time being over-medicated and not being able to feel the Spirit. It's so incredible that she's made it to this point where now she feels again and that she is awake again. And now she has this thirst and this hunger to just devour anything that has to do with the gospel of Jesus Christ. She's excited for it. And I feel her excitement. And I am so grateful that she held on long enough to get to this point. And we cannot judge anybody's journey. We cannot judge how difficult one thing is compared to another, but I'm just grateful. Let's just say that I am grateful that she came on this podcast and was willing to be open and vulnerable about a situation that really doesn't get enough light on it. We need to hear the stories of these people who are suffering with mental illness and recognize that they are children of God. It's not their fault, and that God loves them and that there is a plan for them. And if this is you, if you are struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, whatever it is, know that we love you. Know that you are needed. Stay another day. We want you to stay. Not just stay with us here in the Church of Jesus Christ. Of course, we want you to stay here. But please stay on this earth. We need you. Your experience matters. This suffering that you're going through is not for nothing. God will sanctify your experience and your example, even just taking one more step, one more day, every day, is exactly what somebody else needs to see. You are loved. God loves you. And we are grateful that you're here with us on this earth. All right, guys, here we go. Let us hear the story of Lacy Elson. Take it away. Lacy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
We are excited to have you. And this is how it's going to go down, everybody. We've got rapid fire get to know you questions, 3 exploratory questions that kind of get into some experiences that Lacy has had in her life in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then lastly, the question everybody gets, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Are you ready, Lacy?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. Lacy, how old are you?
48, almost 50. That is half a century old.
You know what? I call it classic. You're very classic now. The older we get, the more classic we become. So there you are.
Great. That's awesome. I've always wanted to be classy.
You're very classic. Now, do you have any nicknames?
Elsie Layson. Lacy Elson, Elsie Layson. I've been called that in church, being asked to sustain in church as a beehive teacher. Well, you now sustain Elsie Layson.
Oh.
And I just laughed. I'm all, is that me?
I guess so.
Everyone just laughed. They knew who it was.
Yeah, it's funny. My family loves spoonerisms, where you take the first letters of 2 words and you switch them off. And so that's the best. I've never heard of a name spoonerism before, so that's perfect. What state do you live in?
Utah.
What's your favorite food?
Italian and Mexican.
What's your current hobby?
Reading. I just try to study the gospel as much as I can.
Got to get it all in. There's a lot to learn, you know. There's always more, which is a beautiful thing. Yeah. What is your most favorite calling you've ever held?
Relief Society teacher.
What's a controversial opinion that you hold? Like everybody loves Crocs, but you hate them.
Oh, this is a good one. Hoarding. Do you throw it away or do you keep it? I throw it away. I throw it away all the way.
I'm the same.
I give my friends and DI gently used items, but if it's junk, it goes in the garbage.
Awesome. Perfect. What is your biggest dream?
To be a motivational speaker.
What is something about you that is the same now as it was when you were in high school?
I love to listen to music. In high school, it was Hillary Weeks, and now it's traditional Christian music.
Yes, I'm really getting into the traditional Christian music as well. I love how it expands my ways of worship, being
Well,
able
they
to
say
feel
things
Christ
in
in
a
different
perfect
ways.
way. They say what I'm
Hmm.
feeling. And I feel like
Hmm.
some music doesn't get that across. And they say what
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling, and it's powerful. And I feel the Spirit so strong, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautifully said. All right, here's your bonus question, which is one I just make up on the spot for you right here, right now. So you
Yay.
didn't know this was coming. um, so let's say your biggest dream has come true. You are a motivational speaker. Where would be your dream place to have your first event where you go and you motivationally speak to us? Where
Any
would it
kind of
be?
women's conference, stake
Okay.
level, board level, women's conference at BYU, Provo, Utah. Any kind of thing like I want to start small. I don't want to just end up in Provo. I just want to get some
Hey,
practice in.
you never
But
know.
I
You never
love
know.
speaking to the women, Christian women, and letting them know that they have power and they have peace and protection by making and keeping covenants with God. And He then in turn gives us those blessings of protection, power, and peace.
I feel that. I definitely feel that. Well, beautiful. What a wonderful, great question to end this little section on. Let's move into your exploratory questions,
Okay.
which the first one we have for you today is, what is a basic principle of the gospel you've gained a testimony of recently?
Grace. Just saying that word gives me the chills. Two mentors that don't know that they're my mentors, Emily Bell Freeman and Jody Moore, have taught me about grace more than anyone ever has taught me. I mean, I might have been taught it, but I didn't really learn it or apply it or understand it until I listened to them.
Yeah.
Emily Bell Freeman, through her grace books, her grace conference I've been to, Inklings she does on Instagram, don't miss this, those things I've learned. Emily's taught me, Jesus meets us where we are, as we are, but He doesn't intend to leave us there. He wants to raise us up to where He is. And I love that image. And if you think of the image of like in Bible videos, on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints website, that it shows a lot of images of Christ in those videos, of Him stooping down, of Him coming down to their level, of Him waiting, pausing, patience, like all these things just being so full of grace, I feel like. And then Jody Moore's book, Better Than Happy, taught me to love myself. And I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm not a robot. And when I do make mistakes, I need to show myself love and grace and not pile on the guilt, the shame, and more negativity. That doesn't help me progress. So those two have really been influential in my life.
It's so amazing that we can get these examples who point us to Christ and show us aspects of Him that we never knew existed. It's not that it wasn't there before. It's just that it didn't sink into our hearts, or that it wasn't explained in a way that really could resonate and stay with us forever. I think that it's really important to read the scriptures and listen to the prophets and apostles. But then if there are supplementary people out there in the world who are righteous and true of heart and trying to do good, who can point you to Christ, it's really important to take that truth and that knowledge from everywhere that you can find it, because you never know when something's going to strike a chord and change your life forever. So I
Amen,
love that
sister.
example. Amen, sister. I love it. It's really beautiful. And I love that concept. I really think there's kind of a grace awakening happening in our church specifically recently. And it's so needed. It's just so needed.
Elder
thank you.
Elder Uchtdorf gave an amazing talk on the gift of grace. If anybody ever wants to go back and look at that's a great one too.
Yeah, well, I'll have to, if I can find it, if I find it fast enough, I'll put it in the show notes and put it
Okay.
there for people to see as well. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd love for them to look that up. Are you ready for your second exploratory question?
Yes.
Lacy, tell us about a miracle you've seen in your life and how was the Lord's hand apparent?
25. I can do this without the camera. 25 years ago, I was diagnosed with a mental illness. And those 25 years were rough. And I started out being diagnosed with schizophrenia, and then it evolved to schizoaffective disorder, and now disorder with bipolar, and now they feel like it's bipolar with psychotic features. And the reason why that evolved, I think, is because what I've read, mental illness is so hard to diagnose, especially when the symptoms overlap each other. And in my case, it was that reason. And those years, I felt like about 10 or 15 years in that time period, I felt I was over-medicated. And I asked for help from doctors, and they wouldn't change things because they didn't, I think this is why, because they didn't want me to have a psychotic episode. And so as long as I was depressed and down and not a high energy at any time, anxiety or anything like that, it made it so I didn't have psychosis. Well, kind of didn't really work because I was depressed and down, and we were trying to have children, and I'd end up in the psych ward anyway. Like 2 times in the 10 years that we lived in Flagstaff before we moved here to Utah. And I was so over-medicated that I would just go to church and fall asleep. I would just start reading my scriptures and I just go to sleep. Fasting was non-existent. Like, it was like my offerings were little. I was giving maybe like 2% to the Lord, and I was like, here, this is all I've got. And I don't know what to do. And I felt guilty. And I didn't understand, I felt God didn't love me. I felt these depressive feelings, these depressive thoughts, and I felt he was punishing me. And so what happens is we moved, and with a new move, we get new doctors, new meds, new things are happening. And I come out of this deep sleep. And now I have mania. And it's like not good. A lot of people love mania because they feel good. They're active and they can do a lot of things, and they're just super, super active. I don't like it because I like the activity part, okay, but I like it during the day. But the problem is at night, it's still going. And so it freaked me out. And I just would be calling, and I'm like, you guys, I don't want to go to the psych ward, please take care of me, help me. Calling my doctors. And they got me on lithium, which is a mood stabilizer. And that worked great. That was one of the first medications I've ever been on that actually worked that fast. Wow. So that was really a blessing. So I'm very grateful that the past 2 years, it's been about the past 2 years that I have been awake. I cycle still. I have weeks of low energy, no motivation and things like that, but I'm not in that depressive state, that deep depression like I was. And then I have my wakefulness moments after those 2 weeks or so. And then I'm like, okay, let me go visit people. Let me go to the gym. Let me do this. Let me do that. So I'm just grateful to God, my husband, medication, and doctors for all taking care of me.
And that you can see that miracle in your life after such a long time. I mean, 25 years is a long time. And I just want to say, I'm so grateful that you've made it to this point, that you're
Yeah.
here with us, that you hung on and clung to, life, to be
Yeah.
here now, to the point where you found a solution that's working for you. And like tying it into your question before about grace, to be able to find healing. And I just think there's probably a lot of people in situations maybe similar to yours, that they are just suffering in silence, and that they don't know the answers, and they don't feel like anybody can understand, and it's all their fault, whatever they're feeling right now. I mean, if you could go back and have now Lacy say something to 15 years ago Lacy, what would you tell her? What kind of advice would you give?
God loves you. You just can't feel him right now. Don't give up. And there's always hope.
Amen, sister. I'm just in awe of you. And let me just also say here, like, bravo for speaking up and speaking out and saying your truth. This is something that I think a lot of people don't have experience with. And sometimes we might worry about judgment or, what's the repercussions of talking directly and openly about these really hard subjects. And it takes massive amount of courage. And so I just want to say thank you for being vulnerable like that and bringing that kind of a spirit and honesty to this episode. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Of course. Your story deserves to be heard. Your testimony needs to be heard. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on to the third exploratory question?
Yeah, there's another talk that really helped me in my life about 2023, April 2023. Elder Vern Stanfill. It's called The Imperfect Harvest.
Yes.
And it's giving our imperfect offerings and that they're perfected through Christ.
Yes.
That is the ultimate life changer. I mean, maybe not ultimate, but it was one of those huge tools in my life that changed my life, especially a recovering perfectionist.
And it's worth recovering from, because I'm in the process of that too. And I love from that talk the part where he talks about the birds, like even the things that are left over, God is not letting any of it go to waste.
Yeah.
Right? Like he sees the swallows and he sees the birds and he sees the worms and he sees us and he sees the people around us, and he is perfecting what we give to him. And that's what's so marvelous about this work that we're engaged in this work of salvation and following Jesus Christ. Like, it works because he makes it work. Like, we just have to decide we're going to participate, and then watch what he can do with us. It's so amazing. Yes, wonderful. We'll have to link that talk. I'll have to find these two talks. Elder Uchtdorf and Vern, what was his name? The Imperfect Harvest.
Vern P. Stanfill.
Vern P. Stanfill. Okay. Lacy, let's do number 3. What makes you so excited about the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Okay, this is going to sound weird because a lot of people don't understand this. What makes me so excited is that I am awake now. A lot of people think the gospel makes you happy. Well, it does make you happy, but it's sure a lot easier to be happy when you feel good.
That's true.
So being awake has made all the difference. And I've come across things like the YouTube channels, Come Follow Me channels, things like that. The doctrine being taught in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm just soaking it up again. I get to feast now instead of just read words before. For 20 years, I was just reading words. I mean, I was trying, but there was nothing. Okay. And so now it's like, now I get to feast. Now I'm like, it's almost hard for me to read right now because I'm like, I've read that so many times. I don't want to read anymore. Just give me the good stuff. And so the gospel is amazing. I love how we talk about it as good news. And I love that. It's so great. And I love how Elder Karen, he's my new favorite. These past 2 conferences, he talks about the gospel of the Church of Joy.
Yeah.
And joy is my favorite word because I used to hate it when people would tell me, you need to be happy despite your circumstances. And that really rubbed me the wrong way. And now I understand what joy is. Joy isn't just being happy. Joy is trusting, having hope in Jesus Christ, and that he will take care of things and he will help me. And that is true joy in my mind.
And it's something that I think is only really discovered through adversity. I don't think that I understood it as well before a few of these trials that I've gone through in my life in the past couple of years, probably like since 2020. And there's just been a few things, not nearly anything close to having to deal with severe mental illness for 25 years. So I will just say that. But for me, it was more than I had experienced before.
Yeah.
And there were more of those dark times of, is he there? Is he listening to me? Where's my redemption in this story? And it was only through continuing to trust in him. And I decided that like faith equals trust plus hope, right? Like it feels like you have to have those things together to just like fall back on Jesus and also be excited for what the future might hold, even though you might be walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And that is where I've found joy, which seems completely wrong, right? You would think that you couldn't find joy in a situation like that, but that is where it is found. And that's why we can embrace these hard times, because we know the Lord will sanctify this for us, and that someday, at some point, there will be more like true joy and rest and peace again.
Yeah, I would say never think that your trial is bigger or smaller than somebody else's, because if it's happening to you, it's big enough.
Oh, that's true. That is true. I like how you put that. If it's and it's just big enough to help make a difference in our life, because when we covenant with God and we attach ourselves to him, he only lets us go through trials that will grow us. Like there are times in our lives that he spares us. He really does. There are some times that we don't get in the car accident. There are some prophets in the Book of Mormon or in the Bible who are taken away out of the lion's den or out of the fiery furnace. And then there's also prophets who are burned at the stake or stoned to death. Right? And it's all for that personal, like individualized plan. And if we can believe that this God is letting us walk through the exact trials that will refine us and help us the most, that gives me energy to get through whatever hard thing that I'm asked to walk through, that he's not sparing me from in this moment. Yeah,
Definitely. And I feel like in the Bible, when it talks about Daniel being thrown into the fiery furnace, and he says to the king, but if not, if God doesn't deliver us, we will still believe, paraphrasing. But I just love that phrase, but if not.
But if not,
I will still believe.
And that, and that's the thing, is that we just have to decide, because sometimes there won't be evidences, right? There won't be that immediate salvation, and we have to decide if that's something that we want to believe in or not. Okay, Lacy, that brings us to the end of this episode, to the last question. I'm so grateful for you and sharing your beautiful testimony. It's really like magical to see you talk about this. And so I'm grateful that you're here sharing your message of hope and trust and grace with us tonight. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready for the final question? There we go. This is what we've all been waiting for. Lacy, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Jesus. Because church is hard. It's hard to go to church when you're offended, judged, or hurt. But I'm realizing, I've known all my life, I don't go to church because of people, but it is hard to go to church when you feel those negative emotions. But I'm learning to understand why. And I love asking that question. Why do I do what I do? Why am I doing this? I ask myself a lot. And I have a little self-reflection moment, and I think, I'm doing this for him. He suffered everything. Pains, afflictions, sicknesses, mistakes, everything that we're experiencing on earth, he went through for us, and he was all in, to share from another phrase I've heard before. And I want to be all in. And I don't think I am, because I go back and forth. I'm here, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in. I don't think it's all in or not all in. I think it's on a spectrum. And I think we just kind of do the best we can. And when we mess up, we try again. That's how I picture it in my mind. And sometimes I don't feel good, so I don't go to church. And it's not contagious. I just don't feel good. So I'm not going. And it would probably be detrimental if I went, especially if I was too hyper or something like that and got up and bore my testimony and said something crazy. So you have to feel for yourself, I think, and you have to ask yourself the whys. He did everything for me. I want to do everything for him. Can I do everything? No. I don't think I can do everything. I'm so limited in so many ways. But through him, he makes things possible for me to do. And I have learned to love him more and appreciate him more than I ever have. Because God and Jesus seem like these all-powerful, omniscient, all-knowing people, gods mighty to me. I've never considered them a friend. I've always considered them powerful. They're going to help me. I need them to be powerful. They need to be in my life, and they need to be able to do things that humans can't do. So I like that feeling. But I wish I had a better feeling of, because during those years of depression, it was ingrained in my brain that God hated me. So I'm trying to break through that mold and be like learning about grace, learning about God's character, learning about Jesus's character, learning who they are, reading the Old Testament, reading the New Testament with Don't Miss This has been eye-opening for me these past years. And I'm learning more. I'm getting a little bit better. I'm getting a little bit closer. I'm getting a little bit more understanding and not feeling so tense about it. But I stay because they have my back and they take care of me. And I want to do the best I can for them too.
Lacy, thank you for your light and your testimony and your willingness to share some serious and some personal things with us that I know need to be heard and need to be spoken out loud. God has put you here in our place, in our path, so that we can hear from you today. And I'm so grateful for that. Thank you for speaking up, being here.
Thank you so much.
Wasn't a powerful episode? What can we do to reach out to others in our life who might be struggling with mental illness? And how can we draw strength from their strength? What it takes for them to get out of bed, what it takes for them to open their scriptures, what it takes for them to go to church is incredible. And yeah, we can't judge one person's trials to another, but I just want to say thank you, Lacy. Thank you, every member out there who is doing their best. And even if your best looks like this much, I'm grateful for you and your testimony and just the fact that you're keeping on. Great work. Thank you guys so much. All right, guys, please share this episode with a friend. Your shares, your talking about the podcast gets this information into the hands of people who need witnesses and testimonies that they are loved by God and that there's a way to stay even through their hardest and most excruciating trials. So thank you for your shares. And if you'd like to be on the podcast, email me, whyistaypodcast@gmail.com. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. And again, thank you for staying with us. The Why I Stay podcast is a faith-based podcast exploring the lives and experiences of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This podcast is not produced or endorsed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we do love that church. All rights reserved. And a great big shout out to Fast Sounds from Pixabay for the amazing and jammin' intro-outro music. Thanks, guys.